I'll introduce myself. I'm Linda Raven. I'm a radical life coach, and I put my website in the chat. Feel free and check it out if you'd like to learn more about me. You are more than welcome to introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already. I'm just going to bounce on my ball a little bit and move a little energy. Feel free to bounce as well, or do whatever you need to do in order to be comfortable. I'm going to be leaving about 10 minutes at the end for questions, but I won't be monitoring the chat while I talk, so feel free to put stuff in the chat and I'll respond to it when I finish the presentation. And I would just like to start by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from the traditional land of the Potawatomi. I would like to express my immense gratitude for their stewardship of this land and to acknowledge that they are still very active in this community, and I'm very grateful for that. I also want to acknowledge that today would be my mom's 90th birthday, so I'm honoring her by wearing this shirt of hers, and I'm obviously also grateful for all that she did for me and our family as well. And I'd also like to thank Coach.me and all the people who worked hard to put this event together and make it happen. So now I will continue with my prepared remarks. Happy New Year! Woo! 2020 is finally over, and it's time to look forward to 2021 and a brighter future, right? So you are attending Momentum 2021 to get inspired to learn some new tricks to be even more successful, to do even greater things in 2021 than before. And I'm here to inspire you to take those first steps towards the new you. But what if I were to tell you that you are already perfect? You don't need to do any more improving. What do you notice when I say that? So take a moment and bring your awareness inside. Feel your feet and bum on the earth. Even if you're in a house or a building, the earth is down there somewhere. And feel your connection and the support of the earth. Take a few breaths and notice the sensations in your body associated with the breath. And now from this centered place, say to yourself again, I am perfect just as I am. And notice what you feel. Now let's take it one step further. Say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Oh, wait. Never mind. That's been used before. Sorry. Okay. So back to what happens when you listen inside and say, I'm perfect just as I am. Maybe you hear a voice that responds with something like this. What the heck is this stupid just believe in yourself exercise all about? I am so done with this positive affirmation crap. Let that voice know I get it. I too am done with this positive affirmation crap. During this presentation, I'll be referring to that voice as the cynical voice. Maybe you don't have that cynical voice today, but maybe you have this one. Ha! Perfect! You! This coach clearly doesn't understand what an utter and complete loser and failure you are. And then this voice proceeds to list all of your character flaws, shortcomings, perceived imperfections, and finally rubs it in with a little reminder of a couple of stupid things you did in high school, just for good measure. I'll refer to this voice as your critical voice. Or maybe you hear this voice that puffs up your chest a little bit and says, heck yeah, you're perfect. You son of a gun, you are rocking this thing called life. Look at you go. You are the best. Nobody is rocking it as well as you are. I'm going to refer to this voice as the cheerleader. Or just maybe you heard a quietish voice that says, yeah, you are perfect. I'll call this the grounded voice. Can you relate to some of these voices? For me, it varies moment to moment which one shows up. So how do you know which voice to listen to? The cynical voice? It's very familiar, especially when people are trying to sell me something. The critical voice, it can be really loud. It can easily drown out those other voices. But that cheerleader, I love it when that voice shows up. She makes me feel so good. That grounded voice, intriguing. But why is it so hard to hear? I'll be getting back to that later in the presentation. But first, let's step back. What is it that you want to be different in your life in 2021? I know that there is a lot you are hoping will be different in the world in 2021, but what inspired you to attend this conference today? What are the changes you want to make in your life in 2021? For the sake of this exercise, bring up something specific into your mind, some difference you want to make in your life in 2021. And now ask yourself, if you were to achieve that goal, what tangible difference would there be in your life? And if you had that difference, what difference is behind that? We're trying to figure out what is underneath your desire for this change. What is the core need that is underneath your desire for this change? So keep going through those layers until you get down to the core need behind the public story that you're saying about the change you want to make in your life in 2021. So for the sake of an example, let's use the stereotypical New Year's resolution of wanting to lose weight, exercise more often, and eat healthier. Why do you want to do that? What would be different in your life if you lost weight? Maybe you believe you would achieve better health outcomes. Maybe you believe you would feel better about yourself. What is underlying that desire to feel better about yourself? Maybe you perceive that you would be more accepted in social circles. Maybe you think you would be more attractive to a potential partner. You see, most of the things we want, when we boil them down to our core needs, can be summarized with some combination of three biological evolutionary needs of safety and security, which is our basic survival need. Community and inclusion is the second one. We are social beings and we need other people around us. Or third, respect and dignity. We need to feel valuable and that our life has purpose. So what you are really looking for from the new year is probably some combination of these three biological needs: safety and security, community and inclusion, and respect or dignity. 2020 was a pretty tough year for getting these needs met in many ways. Let's hope 2021 is a little easier. But I just want to pause here and emphasize that there is nothing wrong with your evolutionary history. You have evolved perfectly. Whatever you are doing now is perfectly normal, considering your evolutionary history and our current societal structure. So let me explain more about our evolutionary history, and then I'll come back to how that relates to our current social structure. Our nervous system evolved for us to track for safety, belonging, and dignity. As I said, ultimately, what we are looking for can usually be narrowed down to one or more of those three. As we evolved, safety was never guaranteed. We were always on the lookout for predators. But living in community kept us safer. Humans survived because we learned to live in community, we learned to work together, we took on leadership positions, we supported one another. But there are also dangers of living in community. We can also be harmed by our community members. So it's always been important for us to be able to distinguish between who is in our group and who is outside of our group. I'm sure since I've been speaking, a part of your nervous system has been tracking to see if I can be trusted, trying to figure out which groups I belong to. It's completely normal. You're probably trying to figure out if I'm in the same groups as you or if I'm on the outside and a potential threat. Maybe you have picked up where I land politically. Ah, she's a lefty. And whether that identifies me as a friend or foe for you, you are subconsciously, or maybe consciously, tracking for that. So as we evolved, we didn't just need community, we needed to be valued by our community. Everyone had an important role to play in the community. This gave us respect and dignity. And we knew that if we were exiled from the community, our chances for survival alone were minimal. We knew on a biological level that we are interdependent. We couldn't even pretend to be a rugged, independent individual, that self-made person who single-handedly achieves great successes. So I said I would talk about our evolutionary history and our current social structure. So now I'm coming to our current social structure. We are still interdependent. Many people knew that before 2020. Many more people became very aware of it during the course of 2020. But here, particularly in the United States where I am, our societal dominant narrative still idolizes that strong individual who can overcome every challenge all by themselves. The thing is, if it was really possible for that rugged individual to overcome everything by themselves, we wouldn't need conferences like this one. We reward people who present a persona of being a rugged individual that can do it all. So in a paradoxical twist, our nervous system says, being independent will get you the respect of your peers. So we put on a persona of being that rugged individual. But then when we look around and see what appears to be a bunch of rugged individuals, we think everyone else has succeeded and we are alone in our failure. So we attend conferences like this to try to figure out what those successful people's secret is. And we have confident people here telling us what their secret is. But the truth is, they don't know any more than you do. You see, when you remove the mask, we are all just as confused. Some of us may have allowed that cheerleader voice to scream really loud so that we believe we are winning in this game. But that other voice saying, "You are such a loser," is still back there somewhere. And sometimes when people name that the game is rigged or unfair, the confident people scream even louder that they are winning. And if you just do what they are doing, you can win too. And just listen to that cheerleader. Because it's really painful to acknowledge that the critical voice is still there. You see, we came into this world with biology that was expecting to find safety and security, community, and dignity. And at some point, we realized we are not getting it, not as we had expected, and that's really painful to look at. What we found instead of safety, belonging, and dignity was an economic system built on continuous growth. That means that salespeople need to sell more each year than the year before in order for our economy to continue to grow. In order for salespeople to sell more, they work with marketers who do something called naming your pain points in order to sell products. They state a pain point. It resonates with you and you say, "Oh yes, I have that problem." And they say, "Well, I have the solution," and you can have the solution in only 3 easy payments. For example, do you want to lose weight? While showing you images of unhappy, lonely, larger people and happy, social, thinner people, sending you the clear message that thinner people have more safety, community, and respect than larger people. So you say, "Yes, I do want to be thin." The thing is, you are actually looking for safety, community, and respect, and they can't actually sell you that. So they open the wound of our pain, promise a solution, but it's only a superficial solution. They can't actually solve the real problem. Even if you do lose weight, they can't actually sell you safety, community, and respect, not in the way your nervous system is longing for it. So you keep looking for another solution. Meanwhile, you have more deeply internalized that something is wrong with you. So let's look at these critical voices. Where do they come from? Because if they weren't there, these marketing pain points wouldn't resonate with us. So let's ask these critical voices why they are so critical. Why are they so critical? Oh, did you go through an educational system that defined your worth by grading your output and ranked you against your classmates? A system that told you you were bad if you didn't sit down and listen attentively, even though sitting still went against everything in your evolutionary biology? Did you work in an economic structure that tells you that the person with the most money wins and makes it really good and clear that if you don't have enough money, you don't deserve to live, you don't deserve to sleep in a warm, dry place, you don't deserve health care or even food or clean water? A system that constantly threatens you with a life on the streets where there is no safety, belonging, definitely no dignity if you don't comply with the rules of this game? And I would just like to acknowledge that I noticed there are a few people who are attending who are in places where you do have public health care. If you feel like sharing in the chat what it feels like to live in a place where healthcare is considered a birthright instead of a privilege, I would love to engage with that a bit. But anyway, I could go on with examples of how our current social structures tell us that our most valuable contribution to society is our labor. And if we do not or cannot provide labor, we are not worthy. But I think you're getting the idea. My point is that these critical voices are not inherent to who we are. They don't represent a character flaw that we have them. They are there criticizing us before our mean second grade teacher does so that we don't get embarrassed in front of the whole class. And of course, our mean second grade teacher was just expressing what they had internalized about worthiness. These critical voices are keeping us safe from other people's criticisms before we get voted off the island. They are working hard. And if you are alive and hearing my voice right now, then they have succeeded, and we should thank them for that. And if none of what I just said resonates with you, and you are sitting there saying, "What is this hippie talking about? That's just what school is. That's what life is. That's what it means to get a freaking job, you dang liberal." I hear you, but I just want to invite you to pause and ask yourself what it would cost you to just entertain the idea that there are other ways our society could function. And then ask yourself, what does it cost you not to entertain the idea that there are other ways our society could function? So now you may be asking, but what about my cheerleading voice? I love that voice. She is still not giving you safety, belonging, and dignity. Typically, she tries to make you better than the rest. That's not community. And she also typically silences the critical voice rather than listening to it for greater understanding. Our pain points are so painful. It's so hard for us to look at them and come to believe that we are perfect. Because if we are perfect, why don't we have safety, belonging, and dignity? There must be something deeply wrong with us. And if it's that difficult to accept that I am perfect, how much harder is it for me to accept that you are perfect? So the cheerleader says, okay, you can be awesome, but only you. You are better than the rest. They haven't worked as hard as you. And she screams louder and silences the critical voice. So do you have a sense now of why it's so hard to hear that grounded voice? The one that actually knows you are perfect and doesn't feel the need to scream it or compare you to others? We have absorbed a lifetime and then some of messages telling us we are not okay. And those voices are really loud. So if we look beyond our own individual failings, we can see an entire society built on turning away from what's painful for our society to look at, putting the blame on individuals. What would happen if instead of trying to be better than others, we just learned to love ourselves as we are, beautifully imperfect? And what if we created strong, supportive communities? If we treated everyone with respect and dignity, regardless of their productivity? What if we believe that everyone has inherent worth and is equally deserving of respect and dignity, regardless of their output? What if we saw our neighbors' challenges not as the result of a character flaw, but as the failure of a society to provide them with the support that we all need? Proponents of the current economic system say that we can't do that. People are inherently lazy. You see, these proponents have also internalized this idea that we are not inherently worthy, and they are just projecting it on others. But what if we truly believed that not only am I worthy, but that you are too? What if we acknowledge that what appears to be laziness is simply people who are not inspired by working for near survival wages while their labor further enriches billionaires? In order to wrap up, you might now be thinking, well, that sounds great, but how do we get there from here? That's a big question. The long-term project is to build social structures that support one another, communities where we value one another and acknowledge our interdependence. We also desperately need to acknowledge and work to heal our painful histories. And in the short term, one more time, say to yourself, I am perfect just as I am. And if you would like to hear that grounded voice more clearly, for only 3 easy payments, I can support you with that. Because truly loving ourselves and loving others is literally revolutionary. And with that, I will open it up for questions. Let's see, how do I get to the chat? Okay, so feel free and type any questions that you have in the chat, and I would love to engage. Thank you. Thank you. I have not yet written a book, but I have one in mind. In the meantime, you can check out my website. I just typed or pasted, to be honest, my website in the chat. What inspired my radicalism? Oh, well, today's my mom's 90th birthday, so I'll start by giving her and my dad some credit. Got a radical family, went to a radical Catholic church growing up, if you can say that. It's too radical. Looks like U.S. democratic leftist narrative very reminds me socialist propaganda, which I was running from in the former USSR. Good ideas and the very wrong psychological wrapping. Safety and equality versus common sense, hard work, and good real education. I would grow it based on my personal experience of many years living under the socialism. Yeah, okay. I know there's somebody here present who's going to disagree with me on this. I never mentioned socialism, and I completely understand growing up in the USSR that that's going to be a hang-up that you have. For me, it's really about connecting, building more community. And for me, our current structure is putting faith in corporate interests to keep us safe. Socialism is putting faith in the government to keep us safe. I'm not really particularly thrilled about either one. I think we can be more creative and find other ways to build strong communities and work together and acknowledge our interdependence. I think for me, one of the biggest toxicities of the current US culture is that fascination with individualism and the lack of recognition that we're actually all interdependent. What about the part of us that recognizes our imperfection? Is that not denial to be too satisfied with this? Good question, Igor. I think for me and Brene Brown, it comes down to shame. It's like, okay, I'm imperfect and that's who I am and that's who you are and that's why we're all beautiful. But if it's like, oh, there's something wrong with me, but everybody else has it figured out, and therefore I can't do anything. And for me, it's also the shame then that we put on others. So there's something wrong with you. Why aren't you just getting off your butt and getting a job? And, everybody else is doing it. So a huge piece of it for me is the shame. Yeah, so Simone, exactly. When I work with my clients, a lot of times just naming, it's not you that's the problem. You live in this really toxic society. Then often people are like, oh, and that frees them up then to love themselves and then make the change that they want to make. But when we continuously are referring to like our inner critic and all of these saboteurs and stuff as like something's wrong with you, then for me, it just like it compounds that shame and just makes it, there's something wrong with me, that there's something wrong with me. And how in the world do you grow from there? It's about naming, no, there's nothing wrong with you. The way you have evolved is totally normal. The way you're responding to the situation is totally normal. Yeah, I hope that kind of addresses that question. Anything else? So, yeah, it's so complicated, Igor. Lots of self-reflection required, going through these layers of shame and fear and all of it, and just learning to hear the different voices, embrace them, love them all. And when you can, I didn't attend an earlier session, but I saw there was an earlier session, something about empathy, and then it sounded like that would be resonant. Yeah. Yeah, Winnie, I agree with you. Media doesn't help at all. So even if, the weight loss ad example that I gave, even if that doesn't, even if that doesn't have the images of the thin people, every single movie we see has images of the thin people. So you're still getting the message that thin is better. Oh, Emily, I was hoping somebody would come with that. Yeah. And where do we go once we say, you're the problem, you're the problem? Why? I always want to know, why am I different? Why am I different? Am I just of superior genetic material that made me not have these problems? What's the issue? For me, it all comes down to, there but for the grace of God go I. I'm not of superior genetic material. I am the result of a lifetime of experiences. And so if somebody else is not performing, to me, it's not just that their genetic code is to be lazy and they just need to get off their butt. But there's a reason why people are not doing what they want to do. Nobody in my mind is inherently lazy, useless, whatever other narratives we give. But I love that you're here, Emily. So I'm going to put my website in the chat once again. And Emily, I would love if you reach out to me. I would love to chat with you, to make a Zoom meeting and chat with you directly at some point. We only have a minute left here. But yeah, I would love to engage with what's special about you that makes it that you have taken personal responsibility and what's different with other people. Yeah, it's so true, Kate. If we give kids the freedom to be who they can be, they'll grow up to be who they can be if we expect the best of them. So many kids are not growing up with that right now. And I hear a lot of people then blaming the parents, but the parents probably didn't grow up with it either. So it's really about transforming the society to be more supportive and recognizing our interdependence.